Hey Reddit. I'm not even sure how to begin this, but something happened that flipped my entire marriage upside down. Maybe it was just the final straw. Or maybe I finally woke up. I'm Marissa, 39. I've been married to Gavin, 42, for almost 8 years. We met through mutual friends, dated for 2 years, and for a while, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Gavin was the guy everyone gravitated to. Confident, charming, quick with a story, always the loudest laugh in the room. He had this natural pull, like he could light up every space he entered. Me? I've never been that kind of person. I'm more reserved. The quiet observer. I'd rather talk to one person in the corner than hold court at a party. But with Gavin, I felt seen. Like I was the exception. Like he was choosing me in every crowded room. Looking back, I think I confused attention with love. Or maybe I fell in love with the way he made me feel in the moment without ever noticing how he treated me the rest of the time. This all came to a head last weekend, his birthday. And if you know Gavin, you know he doesn't do subtle. He wanted a full-out celebration, private dining room at a luxury restaurant in downtown Charleston, a guest list of over 30 people, open bar, customized cocktails, even a themed dress code. He didn't plan any of it. I did. I spent weeks putting it together. The guest list. The venue. The perfect menu. The subtle decorations. The entire night was built around making him feel special. He didn't ask me to. But that's what love looks like, right? Or at least, that's what I thought. The night started fine. People mingling. Laughing. Gavin is doing his usual thing, bouncing from group to group, working the room like he owns it. I mostly stayed near the bar with my sister and Jenna, my best friend. Kept tabs on everything. Made sure the food came out on time. Refreshed drinks. I didn't mind, it's how I've always shown up in this marriage. Supporting. Managing. Making sure things don't fall apart. After dinner, someone tapped a glass and called for a speech. And Gavin? He lives for a speech. He stood up, barely tipsy but fully glowing from all the attention. At first, it was the usual Gavin material, jokes, charm, heartfelt nods to friends and family. Everyone laughing. Clapping. Hanging on his every word. Then, he turned toward me. And of course, he said, raising his glass, I have to thank my beautiful wife, Marissa. I smiled. Ready for the warm, grateful words I'd heard him say so many times before. But instead, he smirked. The most patient woman in the world. I mean, let's be real. I settled. Laughter. Not awkward laughter. Real laughter. His younger brother nearly spat out his drink. His mother covered her mouth like she was trying to stifle a giggle. Someone across the room shouted, Yo, Harsh! I felt my cheeks burn. My stomach flipped. But Gavin didn't stop. I mean, come on, he added. We all know I was the catch, right? Marissa had to lock me down before someone else did. More laughter. A few whistles. My father chuckled. Even my sister forced a smile, though her eyes shot me a look that said, Are you okay? I wasn't. And the worst part? Gavin didn't even flinch. He waved his hand at me like it was nothing. Oh, come on, babe, you know I love you. You got the best deal of your life. I smiled. I nodded. I laughed even. Because what else do you do when your husband publicly makes a joke about regretting his marriage, and everyone laughs along with him? But something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I stayed through dessert. I made sure the cake was cut and the gifts were gathered. But I wasn't there anymore. After the party, I didn't say a word. Not in the car. Not when we got home. Not even when Gavin turned on the TV like he hadn't just humiliated me in front of 30 people. He flopped onto the couch, loosened his tie, and muttered something about the food being a little dry. I watched him for a moment. Not like a wife watching her husband. Like a stranger. Like someone quietly studying an animal they thought they knew, only to realize it had teeth they'd never noticed before. I didn't confront him that night. Because I wasn't ready to be gaslit. I wasn't ready to hear the excuses, it was just a joke. Or, you're too sensitive. Or worse, everyone else thought it was funny. So instead I watched. I observed the patterns I'd ignored for years. The way Gavin always managed to be the center of every room, while I hovered just outside of it. The way every compliment came with a qualifier. The way he turned every story into a joke that I just happened to be the punchline of. And the more I noticed, the more the speech stopped feeling like a one-time mistake, and started looking like a summary. A summary of our marriage. He didn't hit me. He didn't scream. He didn't cheat. But he eroded me. Quietly. Subtly. With every backhanded joke. Every eye roll. Every time he told people I was the grounded one. Like being stable was something to mock. I started replaying old memories through a new lens. Like how, during our engagement party, he joked to his friends that she chased me until I gave in. Or how, at our wedding, he added a little line to his vows. She says she's the lucky one, but we all know I am, right, babe? And the room burst into laughter while I smiled through gritted teeth. Or how, on our honeymoon, he flirted with a hotel bartender right before me and called it just playing around. It had always been there. But until that birthday speech, I didn't realize how much I had normalized the disrespect. And the scariest part? I wasn't even sure he knew he was doing it. Because Gavin was the kind of man who didn't see the damage he caused, he only saw the reactions to it. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I got quiet, I was moody. If I snapped back, I was cruel. His world had no room for accountability, just charm, spin, and laughter. But I wasn't laughing anymore. And I wasn't interested in being patient for the first time in years. Once I stopped waiting for Gavin to change, things got very clear, very fast. I didn't confront him. I didn't beg for an apology. I didn't even bring up the speech. He probably thought that meant I'd moved on. But I hadn't. I just moved differently. I started with small things. Things he wouldn't notice. Cleared my browsing history. Changed the password on my email. Downloaded a digital copy of our marriage license, our prenup, and our shared mortgage paperwork. Opened a new bank account in my name only, quietly, carefully, transferring small amounts from my freelance income into it. I wasn't in a rush. I wanted it done right. Because leaving someone like Gavin wasn't about packing a bag and walking out. It was about unhooking yourself from every place they latched on, financially, legally, emotionally, without alerting them to the fact that you were slipping the leash. He still hadn't apologized. Not for the speech. Not for the way I quietly withdrew from him. He barely noticed, to be honest. He just assumed I was in one of my moods. I let him think that. The less he suspected, the more room I had to breathe. I started going to therapy again. I didn't tell him. I made the appointment under my maiden name and paid out of pocket. Sat in that office week after week and finally let myself say the things I'd never said out loud. Like how I felt more like Gavin's assistant than his wife. How I could list every one of his dreams, but he couldn't name a single one of mine. How he once told me he never saw himself getting married, and somehow made me feel lucky that he'd settled for it anyway. Those sessions were like cracking open a window in a house that had been sealed shut for years. I started sleeping better. Breathing deeper. I started seeing a version of myself I hadn't known existed. A version that didn't shrink when someone laughed too loud or spoke over her. One night, Jenna came over. She sat on my couch and just looked at me for a moment. "You're leaving him," she said like it wasn't a question. I didn't deny it. She nodded. "Good." She didn't say finally or what took you so long. She didn't make me feel guilty for staying as long as I did. She just said good. And that was the first time I realized I wasn't the only one who had seen it. I just happened to be the last one to believe I deserved better. The moment that sealed it didn't come with a scream. It came with a favor. A simple, selfish, perfectly Gavin favor. It was about 2 months after the birthday speech. I was still playing the part, still cooking dinners, nodding at the right moments, letting him think we were fine. Not because I owed him peace. Because I needed time. Then, one night, as we were getting ready for bed, Gavin walked into the room with that look he wore whenever he was about to inconvenience me. "You wouldn't mind helping me prep for my panel this weekend, right?" I glanced up from my book. "Panel?" "Yeah," he said, already distracted by his phone. The business conference in Atlanta. I got asked to speak on a relationship building panel. You know, client trust, loyalty, stuff like that. I blinked. He looked at me, grinning. They want me to talk about how being married helps you relate better to clients. Shows you're stable. Reliable. Settled. He said it again, settled, with no hint of irony. No awareness. As if it were a compliment. A badge. I stared at him. You want me to help you write a speech? I said slowly. About how our marriage makes you look more trustworthy to clients. He nodded, oblivious. Exactly. You're great with words. You know how I ramble. I should have laughed. Or cried. Instead, I just felt hollow. Because in that moment it hit me. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a reference letter. He wanted me to be the proof of his stability. The character witness. The evidence of emotional maturity he could point to without ever having to embody it himself. This man, who couldn't say a kind thing about me in front of our friends, who had weaponized jokes and drowned me in silence for years, wanted me to ghostwrite a speech about how being married had made him a better man. It wasn't that he was clueless. It was that he thought I was still willing to serve. Still willing to fold up everything I was just to make him look good. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I said yes, of course. Because Gavin never heard no unless it was wrapped in yes. But that night, after he went to sleep, I opened my laptop. And instead of writing his speech, I wrote my own. Not for a conference. Not for him. For me. A plan. A timeline. A final checklist. I was done. Truly, irreversibly done. And this time? He wouldn't even see it coming. I didn't leave in a dramatic blaze. I left in pieces. One login at a time. One drawer at a time. One copied document at a time. I knew Gavin better than anyone, and that was the advantage. I knew when he stopped paying attention, which bills he never looked at, which emails he ignored. I knew that as long as the lights stayed on and his routines weren't interrupted, he wouldn't notice me pulling away. So I started small. I removed myself from our joint Amazon account. He probably thought it was a glitch. I started paying for my phone plan. Cancelled the backup credit card I'd never used but had still been tied to him. I scanned every important document I could find, tax records, retirement info, the deed to our house, and saved them to a drive he didn't know existed. I rerouted my freelance income to the account I'd opened months earlier. Changed my mailing address for every solo subscription. When I tell you Gavin didn't notice a thing, I mean it. Because Gavin never saw anything that wasn't directly about him. Even when I moved my clothes into storage, he didn't blink. Just thought I was finally cleaning up. He'd ask where something was, and I'd smile. Shrug. Offer to check the laundry. Or say I was reorganizing. He never asked twice. Because in his mind, I was reliable. Predictable. His system administrator is in yoga pants. The more invisible I made myself, the more he assumed I was exactly where he wanted me. And that's what made it so easy. Jenna helped me find a short-term rental. Tiny place. 1 bedroom. No frills. But it was mine. The first time I stepped inside, I cried. Not because I was scared. Because I could finally breathe. We set a date. A Thursday. I didn't pick Friday. He came home early on Fridays. And I didn't pick the weekend. He'd have time to corner me, argue, make a scene. But Thursday? He'd be at work. His schedule was always packed on Thursdays. He'd never miss me before 7 p.m. So I packed the final boxes that morning. Left a single envelope on the kitchen counter. No long letter. No accusations. Just the logistics, the storage unit key, the list of accounts I'd already removed myself from, and a simple sentence. You didn't settle, Gavin. You just never appreciated what you had until it was gone. And I left. No fanfare. No backward glance. Just the soft click of a door I never planned to unlock again. I didn't expect him to call. Not right away. I figured it would take Gavin a few hours to realize what had happened. He'd walk through the house, notice the missing coats, the absence of my keys on the hook, the shelves that used to hold my books now sitting a little too bare. He'd see the envelope. And I imagined him staring at it, still thinking it was a joke. Because Gavin always thought he had more time. More chances. More of me. He called around 8 p.m. I didn't answer. He texted, "Is this a joke?" Then, "Where are you?" And finally, "Can we just talk about this?" I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Because I had nothing left to explain. By 10 p.m., the calls stopped. I imagined him sitting in that house, our house, alone. No crowd. No dinner party. No audience to charm. Just silence. Just space. Just the realization that the woman he thought would never leave had walked out the front door without a single scene. I didn't block his number. Not yet. I wanted him to sit with it. The uncertainty. The discomfort. The way it feels when someone finally treats your presence as optional, because you treated them that way for years. The next day, I got a long email. Full of Gavin's greatest hits. "I didn't know you felt this way. Why didn't you say anything sooner? We could have fixed this together." I read it once. And it was all there, confusion masquerading as vulnerability, guilt disguised as concern, accountability offered only because the consequences had finally arrived. But nowhere in that message was the thing I needed. Truth. Not just regret. Not just, "Sorry I made you feel that way." I needed acknowledgement. Of the patterns. The entitlement. The public humiliation. The years of slow erosion passed off as humor and charm. And Gavin didn't have that in him. He probably never would. So I didn't write back. Instead, I logged out of our shared Spotify account. Deleted the shared calendar. Cancelled the Netflix subscription tied to my card. Small things. Petty maybe. But they were mine to reclaim. Because I'd spent years disappearing in his orbit. And now? He'd have to sit in the quiet he created. Alone. I wish I could say that leaving felt like a movie moment. Like the clouds parted and the music swelled and I suddenly became this bold, unshakable version of myself. But it didn't feel like that. It felt quiet. Like finally removing a too tight ring and realizing you can breathe again, even if the skin underneath is still bruised. The first week alone was strange. The silence wasn't haunting, it was disorienting. For years, every room I walked into had Gavin's voice in it. His jokes. His footsteps. His opinions. His presence. And now? It was just me. I sat on the floor of my new apartment, eating boxed mac and cheese on a paper plate, watching the city lights through a dusty window, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Still. Not numb. Not buzzing with anxiety. Just still. I started waking up early again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I went on walks. Bought fresh flowers for the tiny table in my kitchen. Started journaling, which I hadn't done since college. The pages filled up fast. Not with pain. With clarity. With little things I'd forgotten about myself. Like how much I loved the smell of bookstores. How I used to make playlists for no reason. How I once dreamed about teaching art to kids before Gavin told me it was a cute idea, but not sustainable. It's wild, the things you abandon when you're trying to make someone else feel important. And it's even wilder how fast you start to reclaim them when you stop asking for permission. I didn't hear much from Gavin after that email. A text here or there. An apology shaped like a question. A message around what would have been our anniversary. "Hope you're okay. I miss you." But I didn't respond. Not because I hated him. Because I didn't owe him my energy anymore. And as the months passed, I realized something else. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt him, or humiliate him, or get even. I just wanted distance. And peace. And to live a life where I never again had to wonder whether the person beside me actually saw me, or just liked how I looked standing quietly in their spotlight. It had been almost a year since I left when I saw him again. Total accident. I was at the local bookstore cafe, flipping through a new release in the corner chair by the window. The same spot I claimed every Sunday. It had become a ritual, coffee, pages, peace. The kind of thing I never let myself have when I lived in Gavin's world. And then, there he was. Across the room. Gavin. He hadn't seen me yet. He was standing near the front display, flipping through a non-fiction book with a cover that screamed, "I'm in my self-reflection era." Same haircut. Same jacket. Still standing like the room belonged to him. But something was different. There was a tiredness in his shoulders. An unfamiliar pause in his movements. A man who didn't realize yet that the spotlight doesn't follow you when no one's left clapping. He turned. He saw me. And for the first time in our history, he didn't smile. He looked like he wanted to. But he didn't. He stepped toward me, stopped, and nodded, just once. No words. I nodded back. That was it. No dramatic conversation. No. "How have you been?" No. "Let's talk." Just two people on opposite sides of a story that had already ended. He left a minute later. And I sat there, heart steady, book still open, coffee still warm. I thought about all the ways I used to fantasize about seeing him again. How I'd be stronger. How I'd have something to prove. How I'd make him regret everything. But now, I didn't need any of that. Because the best revenge wasn't looking amazing or being with someone new or living some flashy life. It was this. Sitting in my favorite spot, in a life I built by myself, full of peace he couldn't reach.